and welcome to the place that I come to breathe. I came here, I wrote Breathe, I was inspired to write Breathe here, so I thought it'd be a really nice video for a kind of behind the scenes this month. It's so peaceful here. It's just birds and trees, really. Although you might hear the distant hum of a lawnmower or something, because there are houses kind of just over there. This is about 5 minutes from my house, this place, and it's a disused railway track actually. And it's the place I come to ground myself, to remind myself who I am when I'm feeling a bit lost. I think there's something very grounding about trees anyway, the fact that, you know, they're rooted but they still can kind of move, you know, their branches keep reaching, they keep growing, their leaves keep falling, they go through that cycle. And I think it's a really important message. Not that I come here because I want to be rooted to one place all the time or rooted on the spot in the same place, but to remind myself to be grounded and be sure of who I am, I suppose. Like I say, this is the place that I come to if I need to feel grounded or rooted. And honestly, I felt a little bit lost recently. I think it's just my age. I think I'm coming to that age. I'm getting a bit of brain fog. I'm getting a huge amount of self-doubt. And I think it's just playing havoc a little bit with my sense of self and my self-belief. And so I'm sort of constantly questioning and doubting myself. So I thought it'd be a really nice idea to come here because, one, yes, I can talk to you about Breathe and how I was inspired by this place, but also hopefully it will just allow me to breathe as well. So I wrote Breathe. I was inspired by this place, particularly when I was teaching. I was still working in schools, and I was finding that what I believed as an educator was becoming more and more at odds with the education system. And so I was feeling that constant push and pull. I'd also gone from quite an unsure young teacher to actually being really sure of myself, really trusting myself, really knowing what was best for the children that I was teaching. And so I'd gone from the kind of person that didn't really speak up in meetings, kept my head down, just got on, did what I was told, even if I didn't really think it was beneficial or helpful or even right. And I was often told, you know, you don't have an opinion, you're not saying enough, you've not got a back, you're not sticking up for us, you're not saying enough, you're not doing enough. And I went from that to someone who was actually starting to really constantly question everything. Who are we doing this for? If the answer's not the children, why are we doing it? To speaking up in meetings, to challenging the people that were telling me to do stuff. And I was then told, you know, tone it down, we've just got to do it because I say so, stop asking so many questions, please just do your job. And it felt like I couldn't win. I was either too quiet or too loud. And when I came here at that time, I was really suddenly struck by this idea, and I speak about this in my notebook video, so anyone that's seen that will know. I think I do anyway. I forget. I think I definitely speak about it in my podcast. But I was really struck by this idea that the trees physically help us breathe, but also that at that point they were helping me emotionally, spiritually, kind of mentally breathe as well. And I really, really wanted to play on that. And I also wanted to play on the idea of how peaceful this is here, that they literally say nothing. There's just birds, there's just the wind, but the trees themselves don't say anything, they just let us be. So the whole final stanza, she sat there for hours not wanting to leave, for the forest said nothing, it just let her breathe. That came to me as a whole stanza. And then I kind of had to think, right, how am I going to write the rest of the poem leading up to this? What do I want the message to be? And I started thinking about, why did I need to breathe? Why did I need to go to a place where there was no expectation on me? And it was because I was part of this whole push and pull that, not just in work, just in society in general, I suppose. And it made me realise that there's always expectations on us to be one thing or another. And the problem is that one person's enough will be another's too much, and it'll be someone else's not enough. And that makes it really difficult. And so the only person we should really try and be enough for is ourselves. I kind of liken it to walking along a path. So actually, if I can show you this path here, I don't know if I can flip the camera. No, I'll insert a little bit here. And actually, we walk this a lot with our children, and without fail, they will always go off the path, because there's parts where you can go down, go up. There's little side paths, side quests. There's tunnels, there's bridges, and they will always say, "Oh, can we go and, go down the sides?" And we always say, "Yeah." That's where they have their most fun. That's where they have adventure. That's where they're most excited. And they might meet something that's blocking their path. They might meet a challenge, but they'll persevere and they'll overcome it. And that is the beauty of going off the path. Doesn't matter which way you go, actually, but the beauty of going off the path is that it allows you to truly explore. And that's when you truly find out who you are, when you're allowed to explore. So I'll see if I can find a little bit later to show you the parts that they go down and go exploring in. But I think that's exactly what it was. So I thought, okay, so how are we, not just in work, not just as adults, but actually growing up as well? How are we often pushed one way or another? How are we expected to be one thing, and then also simultaneously the total opposite? And so that's how it kind of started, with, okay, if you're really quiet or you're really loud, or they ask advice but then they ignore it because they think they know better, even though they asked you in the first place. So there was a lot of trial and error with those initial stanzas of which parts am I going to include. The too loud or too quiet, too fierce or too meek, that all came quite quickly as well. So that one was probably the second stanza that was written, and then I kind of worked from there with the earlier ones. And I just decided to start thinking about the fact that it's okay to escape to somewhere, and for me it was here. It was like I suppose it's not really a forest, but it feels like a forest sometimes. For some it's a forest, for some it's in the ocean, for some it's the mountains, some it's a lake. For some people it's a person. It's whoever and whatever allows you to simply be, without expectation, without anything thrust upon you. Just allows you to be yourself and figure out and hear your own voice. I think that's the beauty of silence, actually. Sometimes we don't want to hear our own voice in silence, but when we feel really quite lost and overwhelmed, sometimes that silence allows us to hear through all that noise to ourselves. Here's a little bit here, you can see how you can go up and then along, going the wrong way, where our children sometimes like to explore. And then, like I say, there's sometimes you can go really low as well. So I had the kind of idea about running away to the forest and finding the trees and speaking to them about how we often feel like we're not enough. And then obviously finally, the trees don't actually give you a solution. And I think that's a really important part of this message. When I share it and it resonates with people, or people contact me, a lot of the time it's about the trees. But actually the true part of the message is the trees don't do anything. It's all us. The trees just simply facilitate us hearing ourselves and believing in ourselves and breathing. So that's how Breathe sort of all came together. But actually, when I was typing it up into my manuscript, I even changed some parts then. So again, if you've seen my notebook video, you'll know there's a few verses, a few stanzas that were originally very different. Not very different, just quite different. In fact, probably nearly all of them went through some evolution as I wrote, or as I typed up, or as I recited actually. Part of it changed slightly as I recited it the very first time. But the two stanzas that always stayed the same were the final one and the too loud or too quiet, too fierce or too weak. So I feel like they were the ones that came to me first, and there's a reason that they've never changed. It's because the message of them is absolutely what the whole poem sort of focuses around and centres around, really. I don't know why it came to me as rhyme. Poems just kind of tend to do that. I don't really know why or why not, but it came to me as rhyme, so it was rhyme. And honestly, if I would like to confess something about Breathe, I never really thought it was very good. I thought it was too simplistic, that it was just sort of telling it as it is, and I always had this idea that poetry should be more than that. It should be full of metaphors and complicated vocabulary, and actually I realised, particularly after the response I got with Breathe, that poetry should just make us feel something, and actually sometimes simple words can move us more than complicated words, you know, sometimes less really is more. And so Breathe will always have this really beautiful place in my heart because of how it opened up the world of writing to me, or for me, but it will also have a really special place in my heart because it taught me exactly what I was worried about, that I wasn't enough. And even when I'd written it, even with the message of it being you are enough, I was like, I'm not sure this is good enough. So the fact that so many people love it and so many people are moved by it and so many people think it's more than enough it's such a wonderful lesson for me. And so yeah, I will always be grateful of it. I thought that I would finish this little video with some footage of this place that I've been taking as we walk along, with a little reading of Breathe to go with it. So thank you for joining me. I won't finish with the car and the graffiti on the bridge. I'll finish in a moment when I get past it all. But thank you for joining me, and sorry if I haven't always looked at the camera in the right place. I'm just kind of trying to watch my step and see if anyone's coming up that I need to move out of the way for. Thank you for joining me. I am going to leave you, like I say, with a reading of the poem with some footage of this beautiful place that inspired the poem itself. Bye. She sat at the back, and they said she was shy. She led from the front, and they hated her pride. They asked her advice and then questioned her guidance. They branded her loud, then were shocked by her silence. When she shared no ambition, they said it was sad, so she told them her dreams, and they said she was mad. They told her they'd listen, then covered their ears and gave her a hug, whilst they laughed at her fears. And she listened to all of it, thinking she should be the girl they told her to be, best as she could. But one day she asked what was best for herself instead of trying to please everyone else. So she walked to the forest and stood with the trees. She heard the wind whisper and dance with the leaves, and she spoke to the willow, the elm and the pine, and she told them what she'd been told, time after time. She told them she felt she was never enough. She was either too little or far, far too much. Too loud or too quiet, too fierce or too weak, too wise or too foolish, too bold or too meek. Then she found a small clearing surrounded by firs, and she stopped, and she heard what the trees said to her. And she sat there for hours, not wanting to leave, for the forest said nothing. It just let her breathe.